When focusing on globalization, there are different schools of thought, namely homogenization, which means that cultures are converging, and heterogenization, which means that diversity remains. This video will focus on homogenization and heterogenization of our food markets. In this context, homogenization means that shopping malls and supermarkets all over the world are becoming more of the same due to global brands that are opening stores around the world. A good example of this is McDonaldization. Heterogenization focuses on the fact that local shops are visible and that the shopping malls and supermarkets around the world are different and are selling different things. This involves many counter-movements against globalization, for example, slow food. There are different perspectives when it comes to the influence of globalization on the way we consume food. Therefore, this video will try to answer the following question. How does the consumer battle between homogenization and heterogenization influence the way we consume our food?
Markets are becoming more global than ever before, and this makes the consumer cultures around the world are becoming more the same, but as a result the homogenization of demand. For example, we all know the brands like McDonald's, which has restaurants in more than 100 countries around the world. For many people, this means that they have access to a bigger range of products from which they can choose. For example, Knorr has a range of products from countries and cultures around the world. Many people make use of this bigger access to products, and therefore the homogenization of our food markets is mostly seen as something positive. The fact that people see this as a positive thing can be linked to the feeling of cosmopolitanism. So, for many people, homogenization is something good on a personal level. However, your age, income and where you live in a rural or urban area has an impact on the way you think about the consumption of food. George Richard uses in his famous book The McDonaldization of Society the term McDonaldization to explain that the 4 principles used by the fast food restaurant are becoming to dominate more sectors in societies around the world. McDonaldization describes the homogenization of cultures as a result of globalization. These 4 important principles of McDonald's are efficiency, calculability, predictability and control. Efficiency means that the way to carry out a task is optimized and the time to do a task is minimized. For consumers, this means that efficiency brings you the fastest way from being hungry to being full. Calculability means that consumers are guaranteed that they will get a large amount of food for low prices. Predictability means that everything in the fast food restaurants around the world is predictable. Therefore, it does not matter if you are in a McDonald's in Amsterdam or New York, because the service and food are predictable and much the same. The last principle, control, refers to the standardization of the whole formula of the McDonald's. These 4 principles are also translated to other fast food restaurants and other aspects of society. Richard clearly joins the homogenization school of thought because he thinks that every aspect of societies around the world are becoming more the same and more rationalized. Others argue that globalization brings us a more hybrid market where both global and local products are being represented. In a way, this could be true, because if you take a look at the menu of McDonald's around the world, then we see there are different dishes on the menus of different regions. However, Richard argues that even though the McDonald's adapts its menu to the traditions of a region, it is still a form of homogenization because McDonald's also sells the same products around the world. However, there are also several counter-movements against the homogenization of food and culture and the resulting loss of cultures. These counter-movements support the heterogenization school of thought, to which we turn now.
When it comes to heterogenization, the focus is more on the local culture and the local and regional products. However, these are also changing over time. One of the biggest growing trends when it comes to food nowadays is the ethnic food market. This could be seen as a move of heterogenization when the food is sold within the borders of the origin of the ethnic population. And as we will show later in this clip, it is a form of heterogenization that is supported by many governments and is a big part of today's counter-movements against the homogenization of our food markets. However, this trend is important because it also gives the consumers of the ethnic foods an emotional feeling when consuming it. These emotions bind the food together with the feelings people get when they think about their own culture. And it's this feeling that is a big part of the reason that so many counter-movements exist nowadays. But what moves consumers to buy locally produced food? Wetherell, Trigger and Allison found that most consumers do not buy local foods because of its background, but rather because they have the assumption that local foods are fresher than foods that are not produced locally. It means that the consumers know about the issues regarding some global foods, but they do not act upon those issues. With this also comes the fact that the consumer is not prepared to pay extra for the food that is produced locally. However, when we go on a holiday, many people find that eating local food gives something extra to their holiday feeling. It's exciting. So different to what was shown before, when in a foreign country, people do buy local foods for the experience. There are several counter-movements towards the globalization of food chains. These movements emphasize local production and regional products and aim to protect these products. This is a form of localization against the powers of globalization. The European Union also promotes the protection of specific products. European regulations support the conservation of traditional small-scale agriculture and regional products. These regulations determine that some products are only allowed to produce in a specific region or with a specific mode of production. This law aims to protect the reputation of regional foods, help producers to gain a good price for their traditional products, and prevent unfair competition and misleading of consumers by imitation products. These regulations protect several types of wines, cheeses, sausages, and olives. This framework is criticized for being protectionism and anti-globalization against the global economic policy of free trade. These regulations have been criticized for rising prices of food for consumers and raising the barriers for producers to enter the market. The EU is controlling the markets and narrowing the competition, which is seen as unfair by organizations as the World Trade Organization. Another counter-movement against globalization of food is slow food. Slow food is a movement that started in 1986 in Italy. This movement aims to protect local products and aspires more direct links between producers and consumers of food. This organization aims to prevent the disappearance of local food cultures and traditions, counteract the rise of fast life, and combat people's dwindling interest in the food they eat. Slow food believes that food chains are incorporated in many other aspects of life, including culture, politics, and the environment. Through food choices, people can influence how food is cultivated, produced, and distributed, and in the end can change the world. Their approach is based on three principles: good, clean, and fair food. Slow food has started as a small grassroots organization, but has grown to a global movement involving thousands of products and millions of people in over 160 countries. But what do all these counter-movements bring us? De Lind noted that with all these counter-movements and the focus on local food, the focus that once lie on the feeling of citizenship, places' own capability to produce good food, and the creation of a local place are shifting. The producers and companies behind local foods are shifting their attention more and more to the integration of local foods on places where this integration might not even be necessary. With this, we might be losing the original idea behind local produced food out of sight.
As a result of globalization, our food market has become more the same around the world. A good example of this is what Richard called McDonaldization, which means the standardization of not only fast food restaurants, but also other cultural aspects in societies around the world. The homogenization of our food market brought us the fact that consumers are able to choose of a wide range of products coming from different cultures. Knorr is a good example of a brand that promotes food from several cultures. So nowadays, when we go to the supermarket, there is not only local food and seasonal vegetables, but consumers are able to buy whatever they want, whenever they want. And some consumers experience this as a good development and a form of modernization. It is seen by them as the fact that we are having a modern society which is connected to other cultures. However, there are also consumers who are not having this type of feeling of cosmopolitanism, and there are also several counter-movements against the globalization of food, for example, slow food. A lot of consumers don't want food that is imported from other countries. Many people have more faith in food that is produced in their own country, and they want to retain the traditional food and local culture. There's a consumer's battle between the homogenization and heterogenization school of thought. Therefore, there are two or even three possibilities for our future. First of all, if the homogenization school of thought wins the battle, then the diets of people around the world will converge, and with it, our cultures will also converge. In this scenario, McDonaldization becomes true for almost every aspect of our society. On the other hand, we have the heterogenization school of thought, with its counter-movements against globalization and its emphasis on local foods. These schools are clearly opposite, and only the future will know who wins the battle. However, there's a third school of thought, namely hybridization, which is the most likely. If we walk through a supermarket nowadays, there's a mix of traditional local food and food from different cultures. The hybridization school of thought thinks that we are moving into a new form of food market, which is more focused on a mix of both the local and the global, which is a more hybrid version than we are experiencing today.